Chapter 18. The Age of the City. The Urbanization of America. There's a sevenfold population growth within 50 years. However, there's low natural increase. Much of this growth is due to immigration. There's also a migration from the country to the city, where people can have a private social space, more and better paying jobs, and railroads and steamships make transportation easier. There are more opportunities for women in cities, and blacks slowly go to the cities too, where they find low-end jobs and form their own African American communities. There are also great numbers of immigrants from abroad. Most of them are from Europe. In the early stages, many were educated. However, now in the late 1800s, they lack capital education, and they get unskilled jobs. What's known as old immigrants came from Western Europe, whereas in this time period more immigrants come from Southern and Eastern Europe. However, there's no single national group that dominates in American cities. There are many ethnic communities of a variety of ethnic groups. These communities help by giving them familiarity that ease the pain of separation, and whatever cultural values of the group help determine their speed of progress. And racial prejudice skills predominance determines which ethnic group prospers. There's an increasing desire to be Americanized, especially among the young. Women have more freedom in America, as opposed to in other countries. However, assimilation is not always the choice. There's American churches, stores that all speak English. There's a new mixture of religion. Nativism is the fear of the foreign, and nativists are upset that the immigrants are taking their jobs. And the reason why they're taking the jobs is because the immigrants are paid less than the Native American. The American Protective Association is committed to stopping the immigrant tide, and the Immigration Restriction League screens immigrants to separate the desirable from the undesirable. The restrictions have limited success, and the immigrants bring growth of the economy and a cheap labor supply. The development of America is impossible without our immigrants. The urban landscape. Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux promoted the park as a refuge from the city. In the City Beautiful movement, they said, we can impose order and symmetry on the disordered life of cities if we add parks and other things to our cities. They planned to redesign the landscape of cities. However, there are too many obstacles here in America to carry that out. There was also a filling in of watery areas for new land, such as Back Bay in Boston, and the development of fashionable districts for the wealthy, and streetcar suburbs that are outside the city but provide access to the city. However, the poor, there are as many people as possible in a little space, so they live in tenements and slum dwellings, which are full of bad conditions, and they are incredibly crowded. Jacob Riis wrote a book, How the Other Half Lives, which provided a description of tenement life, especially through his photographs. Mass transportation was needed in large cities with many people, so the elevated railroad came about first in New York. The subway came about in Boston, and there are new techniques of road and bridge building. And so when cities build up, there are better construction strategies that help lead to the development of skyscrapers and elevators. The steel girder construction. Without steel, we can't have skyscrapers. Louis Sullivan developed functional elements to distinguish the skyscraper's height, like large windows, sheer lines, etc. Frank Lloyd Wright expanded Sullivan's innovations, and he applied them to low and tall buildings. Strains of urban life. Along with great progress comes great, how should I say this, problems. Many cities suffer great fires. So because of this, there is encouraged for fireproof buildings and fire departments. There are also environmental problems like fires, disease, plagues, and crowding. The improper disposal of waste leads to the pollution of the water supply, and because of the amount of animals in cities, leads to unclean environments. And there is air pollution from the factories. So there begin crusades to improve environmental conditions like new sewage and drainage systems. Alice Hamilton in particular was a pioneer in the identification of pollution in the workplace. She said that the improper disposal of dangerous substances can lead to widespread sickness, and she began the progress of requiring manufacturers to solve these problems. The public health service helps prevent occupational diseases, and this leads to the idea of public health that is responsible by the federal government. And this also helps bring about an awareness of environmental issues. For those in poverty, there is a limited relief by organizations and agencies such as the Salvation Army. But some of them, like the Salvation Army, focus more on religious revivalism than they do actually helping people. There are high crime rates. Some people blame the immigrants for this, but Native Americans are just as likely to commit crimes. There are professional police forces. However, they deal differently whether you're white or black, rich or poor, and there are other forms of protection as well. The urban machine. There's a power vacuum created by the growth of cities. So urban bosses, who are often foreign, have this goal to win votes for his organization and win loyalty of their constituents. So they provide them with the occasional relief and patronage. However, they are full of graft and corruption. The most famous is William Tweed, boss of Tammany Hall. So boss rule helps in modernizing the infrastructure, expanding government stability, even despite their critics. The rise of mass consumption. The middle class is growing and increasing in prosperity, aka rising income. However, the working class is progressing more slowly. There are more affordable products and merchandising techniques, so this leads to consumer goods in broad markets. Now there are ready-made clothes, leading to an interest in fashion. With canned food comes an improved diet and better health and increased life expectancy. Chain stores present competition for locals, but they provide more variety and lower prices. Mail order catalogs such as Ward and Sears changed the lives of people in remote areas because they can now access items that they would otherwise not have obtained. Department stores sell merchandise at lower prices, and they provide many more products. This leads to the idea of glamorous shopping and shopping as a social event. The National Consumer League uses the power of women as consumers to improve wages and conditions for women workers. Leisure in the consumer society. As working hours are decreasing, and faster industry. This gives more people time for leisure. Leisure has gone from a negative view to a more positive view. It is now a contribution to emotional and spiritual health. Simon Paddon said that our society moves from a scarcity to a pleasure economy. So now there is an abundance of goods and a pursuit of pleasure. Now public leisure means entertainment, means going out. There are some gender-specific and ethnic-specific events. There's a rise of spectator sports such as professional baseball and collegiate football. There's also basketball, boxing, horse racing with the Kentucky Derby. Gambling is also associated with sports. Men wanted to create their own male culture in the cities. However, there's also an increasing number of women in sports, such as golf, tennis, bicycling, croquet, and others. There's ethnic theater, musical comedies, vaudeville, which presents a variety of acts. These are open to black performers. Thomas Edison, with his technology of the motion picture, which leads to a mass entertainment medium. And one of the most famous movies of this time period was The Birth of a Nation, which was a celebration of the KKK and demeaning of blacks. So the audience is white dominated. For working class leisure, even getting out on the streets or in saloons is something of leisure. Some of these are ethnically specific, but they lead to crime and violence. The 4th of July grows in importance as a celebration of the nation's independence. The immigrants in particular helped move this along as a holiday because they wanted to be Americanized. In the South, whites imposed restrictions on how the 4th of July is celebrated by blacks. Additionally, in addition to the public pursuits of leisure, there are private pursuits such as dime novels, performing music in the home such as classical, traditional, and ragtime. There is increased newspaper creation and a national press service which standardizes the news. Yellow journalism, in which sensational, lurid reporting to reach a mass audience, including William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. High culture in the age of the city. Literature is recreating the urban social reality. Stephen Crane paints a picture of urban poverty and slum life in his book Maggie, a Girl of the Streets. Theodore Dreiser abandons the traditions of earlier times and focuses on social dislocation and injustices of the present. Frank Norris focuses on the struggle between farmers and railroads. Kate Chopin writes of the oppressive features of traditional marriage. William Dean Howells shows the shallowness and corruption in the ordinary American life. Some, on the other hand, respond to American society by withdrawing from it. And there's a rise of literature and a rise of reading clubs. The Ashcan School, in which painters portrayed social realities such as slums, violence, and cities, through expressionism and abstraction. Modernism, which glorified in the ordinary and the future course rather than glorification of the elites and the past. Darwinism, with evolution and natural selection becoming widely accepted. So there is a growing schism between cosmopolitan cities and traditional provincial culture. William James, with pragmatism, that modern society should rely on scientific inquiry rather than inherited ideals and moral principles. Additionally, a growth of anthropology, studying other cultures, particularly that of Native Americans. There's the spread of public education and attempts to assimilate the Indians. The Moral Land Grant Act, in which the government gives land to states to build colleges. Other colleges grow from millions donated by business and financial tycoons. Increase in women's colleges, which grow as distinctive women's community. The purpose of female higher education, so they have their own roles to perform in society aside from being a wife and a mother. Now, we've been talking about culture, and next time we will be discussing the politics of this time period.